Welcome into the Lucas podcast. Frankel and Mike Lucas and the New York Football Giants made the only move they could possibly make. They got Daniel Jones to agree to an extension, 4 years, $160 million. Good quarterbacks are really hard to find in this league, and when you have one, you cannot let them go. The Giants did what they had to do. Mike, what is your thoughts on Daniel Jones getting $40 million per year from the New York Football Giants?
When I first saw the initial report of 4 for 160, I nearly had a heart attack. And then I saw the updated numbers, which was only 2 years, $82 million guaranteed. And I actually think it's a pretty damn brilliant move by the Giants. It's essentially 1 year beyond the franchise tag with relatively the same cap hit. It's $41 million a year guaranteed as opposed to 32.5. The cap hit's the same. And essentially you're giving yourself 1 more year. So you give yourself 2 years to test out Daniel Jones. And if he is good, then you have 2 years on the back end of that contract at around $40 million. That is a very reasonable price for a quarterback of his caliber at that time. Considering where the quarterback prices are going year after year, they get higher and higher. So $40 million will be right in the middle of the pack where he is. And if he's not good, he counts 1 more year against the salary cap. You can get out after 2 years, break your hands clean. It's only $82 million guaranteed. He has some extra incentive bonuses. So I thought the Giants were in almost a lose-lose situation. I didn't think Jones was going to agree to such an incentive-laden deal. He did. So I think the Giants made the best of a weird situation because he's not worth $40 million a year, but you also had no choice but to pay him. So I think the fact they got $82 million guaranteed in 2 years, and then there's a clean break if need be, is a pretty safe and savvy move by Joe Schoen and the Giants front office.
But that sort of goes back to our conversation from last week where we talked like Bradley Beal's not worth, 45, whatever he's worth, $50 million a year that he's getting from the Wizards. Like a lot of these players are not worth what they're getting paid, but just because of the way that sports is working now, there's a price you have to pay to get slightly above average players to agree to play to your team. And that seems like what the Giants had to do here. But I think Daniel Jones, let's call it what it is. He's one of the worst, if not the worst, supporting cast in the NFL last season. He's throwing a Richie James, and who else is he?
His best receiver was Isaiah Hodgins, who they picked up off Buffalo's practice squad midway through the season.
So you just look at the fact of who he's throwing to, and the upgrades that the Giants can make to that offense. Like everyone points to, he threw 15 touchdowns last year, but he had no one to throw to. So if the Giants could just get him. Obviously Kenny Golladay was supposed to be someone that Daniel Jones was to rely on it, but he ended up being a complete zero which was shocking because he was so good with Stafford. But when he was with Detroit, he was great. But either way, Daniel Jones, I think if you give him an offense with weapons to work with, I think he could be a very, 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 high functioning quarterback. And given, his dual threat ability, I think he's one of the more talented guys in the league. And you look at guys that, who would you rather have, Daniel Jones or Kyler Murray?
Jones.
Daniel Jones. Yeah, exactly. Daniel
Run
Jones
down
or
the
Derek
list.
Carr.
You put the list in the rundown. Run down the list.
Daniel Jones or Derek Carr.
Jones.
Daniel Jones or Jared Goff.
Jones.
Jones or Kirk Cousins.
Kirk right
think
now.
About that one?
Kirk. I mean,
I would take Goff and Kyler over Kirk Cousins.
No. Oh, no. Kyler's the worst. Kyler's the worst on the list.
I
think Kyler's terrible. I do not think he's a good NFL quarterback.
But he is such an athletic freak, and he is so talented.
I would not take Kyler over any of those. The only one on that list that you sent, who I would.
We're not done. We're not done with the list yet. So
Kirk Cousins. I think Jones has a much higher ceiling than Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is better right now. So I would take in the Giants situation Jones.
I think Kirk Cousins has proven through his time in the league that when push comes to shove, yes, he can win you some games in the regular season, but when you need him to perform in the playoffs on a 3rd down and 16, he'll throw a 3-yard check down and be completely satisfied because he got the completion. And that play, Mike.
I know it's so edgy, but at the same time, he's had 8 years of really above average regular season quarterback play in the league. Daniel Jones has been good as an NFL quarterback for 1 year. So that one's tough. Give me Jones, but you can make a case for Cousins. Give me Jones. Keep going.
I can't believe you're defending Kirk Cousins. Like you know that if you have Kirk Cousins, you essentially have maybe a 1% chance of winning the championship.
But you don't know if you have Daniel Jones who's going to be good or not.
But we've seen based on what he did this past season, I already have more faith in him than I do in Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins had, and you want to compare the supporting cast like Justin Jefferson? Like,
listen, fair. All things.
Right,
I love Daniel Jones. I'm a huge Jones. I'm just saying we've seen Daniel do it for 1 year. Kirk Cousins has been an above-average NFL quarterback for a decade.
Kirk Cousins has done nothing. Has accomplished nothing. He's accomplished
Neither
nothing.
is Daniel Jones.
All right, but we're not arguing about what they achieved. We're talking about who we'd rather have.
Next,
Daniel Jones or Dak Prescott.
Daniel Jones.
Yeah, so like when everyone's freaked out about, and then Justin Fields, whatever. I mean, that's an interesting one. I don't know.
I would take Fields, but
anyway, we were arguing about all these guys that got monster contracts. Derek Carr's, Kyler, Carr, Cousins, Prescott have all gotten massive deals, and we're saying that we would take Daniel Jones over all these guys. So this notion about being upset about Daniel Jones making $40 million a year, I mean, get over yourself. This is what it costs to get a good quarterback. So honestly, I don't want to hear it.
No, it's what it costs to take a good quarterback. Once again, if this was 4 years, 160 guaranteed, then you're tied to him. And if this was a 1 year blip on the radar for what Daniel Jones is in totality, then it's a terrible deal. But considering no matter what, you're going to franchise tag him, all you did was add 1 extra year of guaranteed money into the equation. And for me, that's worth the risk. You look at what Daniel Jones came into the league with when he was drafted. He's had Joe Judge and Pat Shurmur as his head coaches for 3 of the 4 years he's been in the NFL. Those were 2 arguably of the worst NFL head coaches we've seen in the league in the last 2 decades. He comes in with Brian Daboll, who has a history of nurturing and making quarterbacks reach the top of their potential, a la Josh Allen. And you see what he does in year 1. You talk to any NFL coach, NBA coach, the biggest jump guys make is from year 1 to year 2 in a system. So the Giants are paying for what Daniel Jones gave them this year in 2022, which is about $40 million based on the current market, whether that's right or wrong. And we could disagree that's way too much money for mid-tier quarterbacks. That is what they get paid. So don't blame the system. Daniel Jones got what he deserved to be paid, even if it's an exorbitant number. And the Giants are betting on the fact that in year 2 and 3, under Daboll with better weapons, he takes that next step forward. And if he does, paying him $42 million a year is a relative bargain in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants did what they had to do, and there's pretty much nothing else to say about it. Moving on to the other team in New Jersey.
Wait, no Saquon? You're going to skip right over Saquon?
I mean, well, I don't know. I thought about it. Like, the Giants brought back Saquon for 1 year and $10 million. Yeah. Like, there's really not much there to say about Saquon.
It's a farewell tour for Saquon in New Jersey. That's all it is.
I mean, Saquon, the Giants let him go. Like, there would have been, maybe who can sign Saquon? But I don't know. I mean, these running backs have such a short shelf life that giving a running back a long-term deal is just a bad investment, because you see all these teams like the Chiefs, Pacheco, like 6th round pick out of Rutgers or whatever he was.
The seventh round pick, the 7th round pick for Pacheco, and the last 10 Super Bowl winners, no teams paid more than $4.5 million per year to the running back. So,
and the Giants are going to pay 10 this year. So yeah, I just thought that those were the 2 big Giants moves from a day ago. And Giants are, I mean, assuming they can add a couple, receivers who have a little bit of credibility, they should be in a great spot to make a deep run in the NFC East and potentially the playoffs. But the Jets lost out on Derek Carr, which I'm not mad about at all. I never wanted Derek Carr. Derek Carr is 0-7 in his career in games below like 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And when you're playing in this market, I don't know, he's never won a playoff game. It just, the whole notion of like Derek Carr was just not exciting to me at all. So I just wish that the Rodgers domino would have fell first, and the Jets could have done that first. But now with Carr signing it puts the pressure on the Jets to make an Aaron Rodgers move. It puts a lot of pressure on Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh to get this guy, because if you lose out on him, then it's Lamar Jackson, which we'll get into in a second. But then you're down basically one guy, and you don't really want to be in that situation. But either way, it seems like it's going to happen. The Jets are making moves to clear cap space. Breece Hall and Sauce Gardner are tweeting about Aaron Rodgers to come play for us. We want to be with you. So my guess is this happens. Concerns I would have are it'd be a 1 or 2 year thing max until he retires. The second one is that from what you've been hearing out of Green Bay is Rodgers is not really much of a team friendly guy. He likes to keep to himself, doesn't really like to socializing or interacting with his teammates. So how would that play in the locker room? The Jets sort of under this regime, and especially this past season, have done seemingly a really good job of developing a good chemistry in the locker room, similar to what feel like the Nets did before they got Kyrie and KD, before they just came in and completely ruined everything and ripped it up and threw it out the window. I feel like Rodgers may or may not have a similar effect, but I think obviously if Aaron Rodgers is available, I think you have to do it. And it would be bring an incredible excitement to the team, at least in the beginning. So that's where I sort of stand on it. I'm a little nervous about the locker room fit and how he sort of interacts and ruins the mojo of the locker room. But at the same time, if the Jets would have had a competent quarterback last year, they might have won the Super Bowl. So that's where I stand.
Two things on Rodgers to the Jets. I'll start with what you said in the locker room fit. If you win, it does not matter. None of the Nets issues were happening when they were winning. It's only when that's
not true though, because the Nets were like when Durant got hurt, but they were still like, a top 3 seed in the East when Kyrie Irving was like, I want out. We were like, what?
Okay, but at that point, but I'm saying
that's an anomaly though. Kyrie Irving's an anomaly, but
yes. In the grand scheme of things, you can put up with weirdos, dudes you don't like, if they help you win. And that is what every person that's come on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show who's played in a locker room said, as we asked them last summer with Deshaun Watson coming to Cleveland. Hey, he has all these baggage. How do you handle that in the locker room? And they go, if he helps us win, we don't give a shit. We don't give a rat's butt about what happens. If he can help us win, that is all we care about. And Aaron Rodgers, for as weird as he is, for as down of a season as he had last year, is a massive, significant, influential upgrade over Zach Wilson and Mike White at the quarterback position. And the Jets roster is currently constructed is set up to be able to compete for a championship right now. The one thing I'd be more worried about, Frankel, and this is less of an overall worry for team success and just I'm interested to see how this will play out. And I'm curious to see what you think. I think Aaron Rodgers in the New York media is going to be like the best jousting match of all time. Like Aaron Rodgers has been shielded in Green Bay for the majority of his career.
But
it's a one-trick pony in Green Bay. It's football that is king. The New York media is different. They don't care who you are, what you do, where you came from. If you're not performing, they will rip you. And I can't wait to see how Aaron Rodgers jousts with the New York media and that back and forth if it doesn't go swimmingly well.
Is it more so the media, though, or the fans?
The media.
Because, you look at a guy like Joey. I think Joey Gallo was had his heart and soul just ripped out by fans like me, just absolutely eviscerating him on a day in, day out basis. But obviously, if you perform, there's nothing to really be afraid of because you're doing well, you're golden. But I think the media, I don't know, the notion of the media ruining these athletes. I don't know. I think it's a little overblown.
You don't think it ruined Ben Simmons in Philly? As opposed to if he was in a city like Milwaukee, where Ben
Simmons and Kyrie are two of the biggest anomalies we could possibly talk about right now.
Well, it was the first one that came to mind. There are other guys who have not been able to withstand criticism. And the one thing about New York media,
hang on. But you say that though, but who? But Joey Gallo was but I think that was more of the fans getting on him. I think the fans have I think the point is, Mike, it's more so the fans. The fans
were giving fans, New York media combine the two into one. The pressure that comes to playing in New York on a day in, day out basis is uncomparable to Green Bay. And I'm not saying Rodgers crumbles under the pressure, but I cannot wait to see how. Listen, he goes on McAfee and talks freely about certain things. When he's in interview sessions, he's vague and he doesn't give a lot to traditional media. He goes about those responsibilities of being a franchise quarterback different than most of the other guys in the NFL. And he's earned the right to do that because he's Aaron Rodgers. He's an multiple MVP winner, has a Super Bowl. New York is different. And I could tell you in Cleveland, and this is ironic, we had this whole thing. Kevin Stefanski was on Part of My Take this morning. Did you listen to it?
Yeah, I listened to it.
He was awesome on Part of My Take.
By the way, I had no. If you would have told me, if you would have said the name Ed Stefanski to me, I would have remembered that he was one of the head guys with the Nets in the 2000s. Yeah. But I never put two and two together until they mentioned it on the podcast. I was like, oh my god, same guy. But whatever.
So
keep going.
So Stefanski was on Part of My Take today. He came off super personable, likable. He's Bill Belichick to local media. He doesn't give you anything. He's cold hard. And there was this whole thing on social media today. Cleveland media sucks. They can't get this side of Stefanski out. How come he's not? And obviously, it's apples to tomatoes. They're both interviews. Part of My Take in the offseason asking about the stuff they do, and they're the best. I love Part of My Take, but they can't ask. After they lost to the Jets, someone can't ask Stefanski about his barber in Rocky River. Can you imagine? A real beat reporter so it's apples to apples. But
yeah,
Cleveland shields its guys. people in Cleveland are scared to be critical of the Browns to a certain extent because the fans won't read their stuff if they're critical, and they have certain, not necessarily agendas they have to abide by, but they have certain stances they've taken that they can't deviate from, which is what I mean. Media in certain smaller cities have to be a little more preferential to the teams they cover. In New York, there's no loyalty to the teams from the media. And if you're not playing well or you say something, the Post, the Times, the Daily News, like they will rip you. The beat, like they will not hold back. And that is what I'm excited to see, how that relationship between Aaron Rodgers, who's coming from the great NFL cocoon in Green Bay, Wisconsin, to the harsh lights, bright city of New York.
I mean, like other guys that like I feel like it's a lot of Yankees, like Sonny Gray got absolutely destroyed and had to basically
and it's a little different in football because the NFL is covered on a much bigger scale than baseball. Baseball probably is more, but these guys in Cincinnati are like a guy in a mid-level mark. Well, Cincinnati, Sonny Gray is the perfect example. The Bengals are 1, 2, and 3 in Cincinnati. The Reds are 4, probably behind Ohio State. They're probably 5th on the pecking order. You're lucky if you have 2 beat reporters at a regular press conference. And then you go to New York and there's 50 guys at every one chomping at the bit to ask questions. So it's just
Rodgers is too much of a pro, too seasoned to be like.
But he's gonna play with them back. That's my point. Like, Frank,
you're just excited for the dynamic. That's fine.
Exactly. I'm not saying it's gonna blow up. I'm excited to watch him play with the media and the jousting back and forth, not in like a we hate you kind of way, but Rodgers likes to toy with them, leave breadcrumbs, make them put. I'm excited to see how that works. Not that it's a deterrent. I mean, I'm genuinely excited to see that jousting match of Rodgers versus the media.
We'll see. In your mind, though, do you think Rodgers is going to the Jets? Do you think this is sort of like inevitable?
Yes.
Yeah, it feels like if the Packers are giving the Jets permission to speak to Rodgers, it feels like it's on the doorstep. I kind of don't love the parallel between Rodgers and Favre because they're basically following the exact same trajectories of their career. Like Rodgers won the Super Bowl like his 3rd year as a starter. Favre won, I know, his 3rd or 4th year as a starter, and then they never won again. And now they're both they're going to play for the Jets, and then Rodgers will be here for 1 year, then he'll sign with the Vikings to replace for cut. It's just like, it's almost silly how similar the careers of Rodgers and Favre are. And it looks like Rodgers is going to the Jets. But
I have a question for you about that. We talked about it on the show. Would you consider Favre's career with the Jets a success?
I mean, given that they didn't make the playoffs, no, it was a failure. Like
they didn't make the playoffs that first year.
No, listen. I remember that first year like it was yesterday. They started off 8-3. I remember they beat the Patriots in overtime in Foxborough. Then they went out like the next week and beat the undefeated Titans, and the Jets absolutely rolled them. And then we were like, and then the Jets went, oh my God, we're gonna be the 1 seed in the AFC, and we were up here like. From once we got to around Thanksgiving, like it was, oh my God, like the Jets fever at that point in 2008 was as high as it's ever been. And then started with the game against the Broncos where Jay Cutler just completely torched them. And then their season just completely spiraled. Favre hurt his shoulder and they lost like 5 of their last 6 games. And I'll never forget the one against Seattle in the snow, and Seattle at that point was not the Seattle that we've come to know with, Russell Wilson and the Legion of Boom. It was a really crappy organization and team, and they just went up to Seattle and got absolutely embarrassed. And yeah, it was a failure.
I admit something? We talked about this on the show today, and I was like, I made a whole argument that it was a massive success, Favre in New York, because I don't remember the second half of that season. I just remember them being 8-3. I assume they made the playoffs, and I was like, listen, the Jets haven't made the playoffs in forever. That was what got them back on track. I need to apologize on the show tomorrow. Thank you for bringing some clarity to that. I thought they made the playoffs that year. I wouldn't have asked it if they didn't make the playoffs. I genuinely thought they made the playoffs.
And then what made it worse was that in week 17, they had basically a win-and-earn game against the Dolphins, and Chad Pennington beat them, and he went to the playoffs. He won the division, and the Jets with Brett Favre went. It was horrible.
I do not remember the end of that season.
I totally
botched.
The ending of that season, I was in Jamaica. I was 14 or 15. That was when I took my first sip of beer after the Jets got eliminated from the playoffs that day. It was a very tough day. But yeah, the Favre thing was a complete debacle. He left after that year.
Dumb question.
Listen, it started out great. The first 2.5 months were euphoric. It was the first game against the Dolphins when he threw that, last second heave to Chancey Stuckey, and it was like a touchdown. Like I'll never forget that. Week 2, they lost to freaking Matt Castle in week 2. But after that, Favre was on a roll for, the first 11 weeks of that season and then just came crumbling down really, really hard. Last NFL one we want to hit on is Lamar Jackson. Seems like no one wants him.
That's bullshit. Listen.
That's the second time you cursed.
I know we're allowed to curse on the show now, so I just feel natural cursing on camera. Listen, anyone who thinks that any of those teams saying no aren't actually interested, you're fooling themselves. They have to say no off the top. There's no benefit to them saying yes. And here's essentially how it's working. And Schefter laid it out on Get Up this morning perfectly. The reporters who are tweeting out the Falcons aren't interested is someone, said reporter, texts Arthur Smith or the assistant GM or someone and goes, are you interested? They say no. Then they tweet out, they're not interested, which is true. The tweet is probably correct based on the information they're given. They're being lied to. Every team, the Commanders, the Falcons in particular, I think the Lions might actually have some interest, but really the Falcons and the Commanders, in my opinion, are the two most likely landing spots for Lamar Jackson. He's played his last snap in Baltimore. He will not play for the Ravens again. The Ravens are going to get 2 first-round picks back for it. It's going to be a steal of a deal. I do not personally believe Lamar Jackson is capable of winning a Super Bowl, so I wouldn't make the move. I think he's one of the more overrated players in recent NFL history. After his MVP season, which was phenomenal, he's taken a couple steps back and he struggled to stay healthy. But overall, this whole situation is playing out extremely weird in Baltimore, and I am buying 0.0% of the fact that these teams are not interested in bringing him in one way or another.
It just seems like the way people are tweeting about like JJ Watt, like there's like a collective effort among owners to like not sign him or not pay him, which I don't know. I don't know enough about. And I hate to think that has anything to do with race, but like Lamar Jackson's such a freak.
Listen, it's not race. We thought about this on the show today too. I love how sometimes these things parrot. Deshaun Watson got that fully guaranteed contract last year. $230 million, coming off all his off-field issues, hadn't played in a year. When he did play in Houston, he was good, but they only won one playoff game in his tenure. It's not like he had this tremendous track record. And Lamar, deservedly so, is asking for that kind of contract. He wants it fully guaranteed. He's injury-prone. He doesn't want a deal where they can get out of it like the Giants can with Daniel Jones. And he has every right and deserves to ask for that. And I think more than race being part of it, I think it's the owners collectively coming together and saying, yeah, Jimmy has him in Cleveland. That's not going to fly. We're not going to guarantee every quarterback contract moving forward. We don't have that kind of money to necessarily put in escrow because the Haslam's in Cleveland, they have money for days. Not like just money. They have money, Frankel. Top 2, 3, 4% of owners type money.
If you're owning a professional sports team in the NFL or baseball or basketball, But you don't have that necessarily money to put in escrow like you have to do for these contracts. We had a Aditi Kinkhabwala who works for CBS Network, sideline reporter on the other day, and she said the whole reasoning behind the Bengals selling their stadium naming rights was so Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals, could have money to put in escrow to sign Joe Burrow this offseason or next offseason. Like that was the reason they sold naming rights to the stadium, to get money in escrow. It's not that they don't have the money in totality, but when you guarantee a contract, you have to put that to the side in escrow. It's not liquidated money. It is money, in hand money. And I think it's the owner's collective effort to say, hey, that's the anomaly contract. That is not the normality moving forward. And this is our kind of stance at saying, we're not going to follow Jimmy Haslam's lead. So it's BS because Lamar does deserve a fully guaranteed contract. I'm not too concerned about Lamar Jackson getting. I think he'll get his money and everything will be fine with him. It's just interesting the fact that like it seems like there's this movement among teams and organizations to be like, we don't want him, which is just interesting given how talented he is. But either way, that's beside the point. The Nets in basketball won 3 straight games. Mikal Bridges, I believe it's like there was some stat. I'll just pull up, make sure I'm saying it right. He's like the first awesome player in NBA history. No, NBA history. First player in NBA history to average 25 points on 50, 40, 90 in his first 10 games with the team. So pretty freaking amazing that Mikal Bridges has come here and done that. Obviously, what we're seeing now with Kevin Durant, they haven't lost yet, the Suns. But maybe the Nets found a little diamond in the rough with Mikal Bridges.
Did I not scream on top of the mountain when they made the trade, Frank, that he actually is a centerpiece of a trade and the Nets haul back for Durant with the picks included on top of him and Cam Johnson was, you're never getting a dollar for a dollar on Kevin Durant, but that's damn near 95 cents on a dollar.
You would call it 95 cents on the dollar for that?
I think Mikal Bridges has a chance to be like a 10-time All-Star. He's a freaking stud, Frank. And listen, there are more guys in today's NBA who are scoring 20 points than ever before. I think Ryan Russillo put it on his podcast last week. There's like 47 guys in the NBA averaging 20 or more points right now. That's the most ever. And like 10 years ago, the number was like 13. So the game's more open. More people can score. 25 points isn't what it used to be. But at the end of the day, Durant was averaging 29 points. Bridges is averaging 25. That's a bucket or two difference. He's younger. He's more athletic. He's not better than Durant. I'm not making that comparison at all. But he's giving you 80% of what Durant was, minus the clutch factor late in games. And when you get 4 picks plus a Cam Johnson plus pick swaps for a team that has their core built around Chris Paul and Kevin Durant, who are both on the latter stage of their career, you might be getting a guy who's a 3-4. He's already an all-defensive caliber player. Could be an all-NBA wing. Plus picks that could be really valuable later. Like, the trade made a lot of sense to me, and seeing Bridges come out and get the opportunity to do what he's doing in Brooklyn now just makes me feel even better about it.
Let's not rush to crown Mikal Bridges and act like he's, the second coming of KD, because he's not.
He's not. But
you saw the value of Durant on Sunday against the Mavs. Like, that shot that he hit with like 3 guys stripped all over him, and he's like just still manages to get to his spot, rise above everyone, and still sink that mid-range jumper like nothing but net. That's the value in Kevin Durant. And just watching, I didn't watch a second of that game. I saw the highlight. I couldn't bring myself to watch Suns Mavs on Sunday, but just watching the highlight of that shot, that's what makes Kevin Durant so freaking good. And it's a shame that we've covered before that he didn't have the ability to stand up in that locker room, to stand up to Harden, to stand up to Kyrie and be like, hey, listen, guys, like because you've seen what Kyrie and Harden have done over the weekend. Like, Harden had a 26 game on Monday. He had like he single-handedly willed Philly to the win over the Bucks. Like,
he's still good.
Like, those 3 on the same team, like, if they would have just given it.
You and I, more than anyone else in the world, were robbed of great basketball. Because I know you probably better than everyone but your girlfriend. And you don't love bad basketball. You love good basketball. You'll watch 162 Yankees games because you're a freak. But you're not going to turn on a random Charlotte Hornets, New Orleans Pelicans game just because you want to watch hoops. We were denied of arguably the greatest trio offensively in NBA history. And for that, we will never recover.
It's a very welcoming thought and a very warm thought to have. But I got to see them play in that game 5 against Boston. It was peak Nets. Yeah. One more NBA point. Jokic looks like he's going to win his 3rd straight MVP. But like, if he does, I don't know. There's been a lot of talk about this. I don't view Jokic as he puts up a ton of stats, and the Nuggets have the best record in the West, and who knows how far they can go. I think Phoenix is, assuming they don't get hurt, which is a strong if, that, I just don't view Jokic in the same tier as I view Giannis and Embiid and Durant. I don't know. And then he'll go down historically as winning all these MVPs, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't view him in that vein of like, I'm not going to look back, and I could be wrong in 15 years. I'm not going to look back at Nikola Jokic's career and be like, wow, we just witnessed one of the greatest careers ever for a basketball player. He won 3 straight MVPs. He was so amazing. And it's just interesting that he, like, in this era with, Curry, LeBron, Giannis, Embiid, all these great players, Luka, that Jokic is the one who's getting these accolades.
Well, part of it's durability. And that's the most underrated part of this whole discussion. No superstar in the NBA plays more than Nikola Jokic. And I think that's what's hurt Embiid in the past. I think Embiid played 64 games last year. Jokic played 79. Giannis missed some time. Steph Curry was on an MVP pace last year. Then he missed 3 or 4 weeks in the middle of the season, and he fell out of the MVP. Even this year, I think Jokic has only missed 4 games this season in the era of load management where no one plays on back-to-backs. Jokic just doesn't miss games. I saw him play, Frank. They came to Cleveland 2 Thursdays ago, and I got upgraded seats. I sat 6 rows off the court, and watching him play in person was awesome. The dude does everything at an elite level. His passing was spectacular. He had a bad shooting night, but still scored 24 points. I went with a buddy of mine, and I looked over, and I was like, man, Jokic is having an off night tonight. And he goes, look at the box score. He had 18, 14, and 13 with like 6 minutes left. And I was like, what? What? So he's the quietest superstar ever. And I think that's what people have an issue with. He's not flashy.
It's not an issue. It's just like,
no, that's what people have issue with him with. It's not an issue for him. It's why people have this hard time believing he's as good as he actually is. He doesn't have the flashy highlights like John Morant or like Giannis, who we associate with when you're just scrolling through Twitter. Oh, it's a dunk. Oh, we associate dunking with greatness in basketball because most humans can't dunk. Most of us can throw a bounce pass, make 70% of your threes, and make layups. And that's what Jokic does. He just does it at such a level that is above and beyond everyone else. It is weird, Frank, that he's going to go down, most likely if he wins MVP. Or if he wins MVP this year, he will go down with 3 other guys since the 60s, since the 70s to win 3 straight MVPs.
It's like Bird, and him.
And Kareem. Those 4. And that's a list that he doesn't necessarily feel like he belongs on. But when you look at his resume, and we did this a couple of weeks ago, he's putting together like a top 10 big man resume of all time, even though you don't think of him in that status. And I can't wait to see. He's like the perfect case study for this, Frank. Do you have to win a ring to cement yourself as an all-time great? Because if they win a ring this year with 3 MVPs, he catapults from like the casual fans tier 4 all time to like a tier 1 guy. 3 straight MVPs and a championship. That puts you, at least resume-wise, in the conversation with the 10, 12 best players of all time. And I don't think anyone looks at Nikola Jokic and says, that guy's on the same level as Hakeem or Shaq or Tim Duncan. But resume says he is.
And he's not asking. He's not asking for this. But if he wins the MVP and they get bounced in round 1 or round 2, like he's just gonna get absolutely like the Lakers could beat them in a series. Like if the Lakers are gonna end up being the 8 seed and they face Jokic in round 1 with LeBron and the way AD. I mean, extremely tall assets to say that AD is going to stay healthy for a period of time. But if you get a healthy AD, LeBron, and like they could beat anyone in the 7-game series. So like the pressure's on for Jokic. If he wants to be in that class, which who knows what his motivations are. I think he just plays basketball and just accumulates stats. Just because
he says he doesn't want to win MVP. He already said that.
It's almost like a sympathy thing. Like you feel like he doesn't deserve to be in that class, but he just managed to somehow be in it. But either way, very disappointing. The next loss to the Hornets on Tuesday night would have been 10 straight wins, but minor setback for a major comeback. No Jalen Brunson in that game. So
are you all in on the Knicks like you were on the Rangers when you tried to jinx them in the playoffs? Are you fully Nick taped up?
Just enjoying the ride with Jalen Brunson. That's all. Last one, a couple of spring training takeaways. Jason Dominguez is an absolute beast. He had that 3-run homer go ahead against the Braves the other day. Just cold-blooded. That guy is just amazed every time I've seen him play. Anthony Volpe, incredible speed, incredible defense. He's probably not gonna make the opening day roster, but I love him, and I also love Oswaldo Cabrera, who just saw a catch he made this Wednesday afternoon in center field. He never plays center field, but every position he goes to, he makes an incredible defensive plays. Love that guy. Needs to be the opening day lineup. Those are my big 3 spring training takeaways. So
one spring training question, because I have not watched a second of spring training, and I do not intend to watch a second of spring training. But is Oswaldo Cabrera, is he the guy who was up last year?
Yes, he was.
They have 2 Oswaldos.
They have Oswaldo Cabrera and Oswald Peraza.
Peraza's the shortstop.
Peraza is the shortstop who has had an up and down spring, but Oswaldo Cabrera, who was up last year, has been.
He hit the big home run in Game 5 against the Guardians, right?
No, Stan hit the big home run in Game 5 against the Guardians.
Then he had the second, but he had a home run late.
He had a home run in Game 2.
Okay, that's what it was.
Or sorry, it was game 3 or Game 4. Must have been Game 3, whatever it was. It was we knew. I kept saying everyone that Oswaldo was going to have a moment in that series because obviously had the lead going in the 9th inning of that game, and then Clark Schmidt gave it up or whatever. That's besides the point.
Just making sure I was thinking the same person. So,
but that will do it for this edition of Lucas Podcast. When we reconvene next week, you will find out that on Selection Sunday, Aaron Rodgers made his decision to join the New York Jets, and we'll react to that next week here on the Lucas Podcast. See you all then.